Hey everybody, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics, and this is my review of the Genesis Arms Gen-12 magazine-fed shotgun. Magazine-fed shotguns have come and they've gone, and they never really caught on because for some reason it's a little bit more complicated to get a shotgun to run magazine-fed versus tube-fed semi-automatic, or of course the venerable pump action. The Genesis Gen-12 works off a DPMS pattern 308 lower, which means if you have a DPMS pattern 308 lower, you can order a Gen-12 upper and a beef-up kit to make your pins and springs and things stronger to handle the 12 gauge, and you can have yourself a magazine-fed shotgun that will work with your 308 pattern lower, DPMS pattern lower. 5-round magazines. There's also 10-round magazines, and this shotgun was made a little bit famous. Used in the last John Wick film, firing Dragon's Breath and making it seem like Dragon's Breath was super lethal. In reality, it's really not. I ordered a 7-inch upper and as an SBS, so this is a registered short barrel shotgun, and I also ordered an 18-inch upper, which I used throughout the review process. Now, you'll notice in the video that you can actually watch me lose weight because of how long I've been working on this review. And the reason it took me so long to finish it, generally I do a 2,000 round review, you're getting about a 4,000 round review at this point, because I was waiting for the Huxworks Ventum 12K suppressor, because the Huxworks suppressor is kind of proprietary to the thread pattern on the Gen-12. You can't really, at this time, you can't put the 12K on other shotguns. Because, especially on the 5, the 7, and the 10-inch offerings from Genesis on the Gen-12, the muzzle thread is 1.735-24. So it's not a traditional thread where you can use a choke adapter or anything like that, although you can do that on the 18-inch. The biggest problem with shotgun suppressors is there's very few choices, and only one of them is really good. In my experience, the Salvo is still king of the hill when it comes to shotgun suppressors. The JK Armament suppressor isn't bad, but to me it behaves a lot more like a linear comp than it does an actual suppressor. So I wanted to do the review and include use of the Huxworks Ventum 12K for the 2,000 round review process, but again, I did not get it. So I've been working on this for well over a year. Those of you guys on Patreon saw an initial impression on this a long time ago. The coolest thing about this right off the bat is AR Ergonomics, and it's reliable. The only consistent issue I had throughout the review process, shooting 2 3/4, 3-inch, double-aught buck, triple-aught buck, slug, specialty load, breaching rounds, 8-shot, BB shot, basically the whole gambit of shotgun offerings in 2 3/4 and 3-inch shells. The only consistent issue I had was the reloads, not the magazine, because the magazines are really good. For some reason, during the reload process, just the slightest contact with the magazine well as I'm inserting the magazine would send the bolt forward. So I'd have to insert the magazine and then cycle the bolt, kind of AK style, and then go back to work. Kind of annoying. And that happened on the 5-inch, the 10, the 5-round, the 10-round, and then I also have some 10+2s with some Taylor Freelance +2s on the bottom of them. They make a drum for it. I did not have a drum for the review purpose. Now, as far as setup went on the 7-inch, I went with a Mod Light. Also went with Holosun aims and some Magpul backup sights, which never really became a factor. But I wanted to put them on there to see how well the overall configuration handled the recoil. Now, this uses a short recoil system, which means the barrel and the bolt move together for a short period of time on a compressed spring, and then the barrel stops and then the bolt continues its cycle, utilizing an actual buffer tube. Majority of the review was shot unsuppressed. I shot 7-inch, but I also shot the 18-inch non-SBS upper. Just using it how I would use a shotgun that fed off of magazines. And this thing is really fun. Not only is it fun, it is fast, and surprisingly on an 8-inch, or I'm sorry, on the 7-inch upper, the recoil, even shooting tactical, quote-unquote, self-defense duty 1-ounce federal slugs, such as like the Hydroshock or comparable slugs, recoil is very manageable. A lot more manageable than you expect out of a 7-inch shotgun. I've also shot the full auto 5-inch version of this with a drum, which I believe was a 15-round drum, and it cycled reliably, and the recoil on the 5-inch was pretty awesome. Now, do you need a 7-inch shotgun? Yeah, you do, because they're fun. Not only that, but they're super compressed. Now, one of the things that people are going to bring up, of course, is the loss of muzzle velocity. And that's a bigger deal with shotguns because shotguns already kind of hang out in the pistol velocity range. Shotguns can be very devastating at closer ranges. They can be very effective and very accurate at extended ranges, same you can get with a handgun. So you're getting a bigger bullet, but it's moving at handgun quote-unquote speeds, and that's not a one-for-one, but they're very similar in muzzle velocity. By going from an 18-inch to a 7-inch, I was losing a significant amount of muzzle velocity, which is what you'd expect. So I'm basically losing in the neighborhood of 300 feet per second, going from 18 down to 7. I actually expected to lose more than that. And I chronoed that on Federal double-aught True Flight, as well as Federal 1-ounce hydrostock slugs. And as you guys see on the chronoing I was checking out, an average right around the neighborhood of 300 feet per second is not terrible. Does that mean that you should run a 7-inch shotgun for home defense? Well, you throw a suppressor on it and it's still very short and maneuverable. The overall performance and accuracy is definitely a factor as well when we consider 7-inch versus 18-inch. Now there's chokes, right? So on the 18-inch, that's something that can be employed, but on the 7-inch, it's not an option because of their proprietary muzzle and the way that they threaded the muzzle, and it's really kind of mated or intended for use of a suppressor. And we'll talk about the 12K. I'm not doing a separate video on that, but I will talk about it in this video because it's kind of mated for this gun. If you're shooting slugs, you're not really going to see a consistent loss of accuracy. So showing you guys a 5-round group I did with those Federal 1-ounce hydrostock slugs at 25 yards bag supported. Now, showing you same ammunition, same distance, 25 yards with the 18-inch upper. Then, kind of splitting it up, Federal True Flight double-aught buck, 7-inch upper, 25 yards back supported. And now the 18-inch upper, same ammunition, True Flight, Federal double-aught buck, 25 yards back supported. So as you can see, significant difference in accuracy on spread shot, double-aught or whatever you're going to use. Obviously that makes a lot of sense because without adding factors, shotguns usually spread about an inch a meter. Inch a yard, right around in that neighborhood. And again, that's being vague, kind of generic. There's other factors such as chokes and things like that that can affect that. And also, if you have using a True Flight wad versus not, or like of course Federal True Flight is designed to keep a tighter pattern without having to use a choke. So if I was using a different type of ammunition, we would have seen different results. And of course, patterning in your shotgun is a very important thing. So going from the 7 to the 18-inch, there's definitely a big difference when it comes to your traditional spread shot. But with slugs, we're seeing significant, very similar accuracy. The biggest factor, of course, is going to be that loss of muzzle velocity. Overall performance of this thing throughout, and like I said, usually I do a 2,000 round review, but we're looking at 4,000 because I waited for so long to be able to find where these Ventum cans. Because I guess they had a contract with the FBI to supply these to the FBI, and that's where all of them were going, so it was hard for one to pop. If one did pop up, somebody usually beat me to it, so I just kind of kept a watch on Gunbroker and finally was able to get one. I reached out to Huxworks and said, hey, you guys want to send me one of these cans for the video? And they said they would, but they never did, and I'm not really one of those guys that's going to keep pestering you for free shit, because I don't like asking for free shit at all. Performance unsuppressed was fantastic. The only issue I had consistently, like I said, was the magazines. Another factor, the manufacturer of the materials that go into the magazine. If you run this thing hard, and I mean a 250, 350 round range session compressed into 1 or 2 hours, one of the issues you are going to have is you are going to start to overheat the polymer during insertion against a closed bolt, which is going to cause your magazines to take on a melting glaze. Almost all my magazines now have that from being inserted onto a bolt that was really hot because I was running this thing hard. Generally with shotgun reviews, I'm able to knock out 100, maybe 150 rounds, tube fed especially, before I just get kind of tired of reloading a shotgun and I move on to something else or I go home. With this, because the magazines are so easy to load and I have so many of them, I've got a stack of 10s and a stack of 5s and a couple of 10+2s. I preload them the night before, go up the range and burn through the whole box. So I'm able to shoot 150 rounds before I have to reload the magazine again. And when you're able to do that with a shotgun that's recoil is a lot softer than you thought it was going to be, you're going to burn through ammo quick. And I definitely did. So all my magazines have a little bit of that glaze on it, but it didn't affect the functionality. It's just something to be aware of if you're going to buy one of these. And if you do end up getting a bunch of magazines, it's probably a problem you're going to have. If you only buy 2 or 3 magazines and you're having to reload them between reps, it's probably not going to be an issue for you. Manual of arms is fantastic because it's AR centric. I use the trigger and the safety and the bolt catch bolt release that they sent, and the only issue I had in regards to manual of arms was that reloading process. Sometimes it would be smooth, but majority of the time when I went to insert a magazine, you know, being in a little bit in a hurry, the bolt would go home before the magazine fully sat, and I really couldn't diagnose why that was happening, because when I was doing dry fire and just doing regular insertions, and maybe it's because I was being a little bit more controlled with it, it wasn't happening. But anytime, pretty much every time, I'd say if I was going to put a percentage on it, I'd say 70% of the time I was shooting this thing on the range, the bolt would go home on its own before the magazine was fully seated, which means I was having to cycle it manually, but not... It's annoying, don't get me wrong. I don't like the fact that's happening. I want to diagnose why it is, but not a significant factor. Now, the 7-inch upper is what I spent most of my time with. I did get about 1,000 rounds through the 18-inch, but then I just took it off and left it off because the 7-inch is really the way to run this thing. Even without the suppressor, using their standard muzzle device, it's considered a breaching muzzle device, what I found kind of strange because there's no vent outlets on it. And usually breaching muzzle devices, standoff devices have venting to prevent too much pressure building up in the muzzle device during a breach because it's making contact with a hard surface such as plywood, drywall, door frame, so on and so forth. And it has standoff crenellation teeth like the Ventum 12K does. I didn't do any breaching with this. I don't have a breaching door. I was going to build one, and then I decided... I don't care enough. I ran some breaching rounds through it just to make sure it would cycle. I have some S&Bs. I also have some, believe they're old ALSs, and cycled fine. Some exotic ammo just screwing around on the range one night. I wanted to break in my range properly and get my first range fire. So I shot some Dragon's Breath through it because, hey, Keanu Reeves did it. Let me see if it actually cycles. And it did, and it ran great. Dragon's Breath is great for starting fires and for impressing unfamiliars who don't understand what Dragon's Breath is, but other than that, it's a pretty useless ammunition. I guess you could use it as a spicy flashbang if you really wanted to, but it usually starts the fires you don't want it to start. Looks great on video, though. Very fun to shoot. So while I was waiting for the suppressor, being able to find one, I got a lot more rounds on this. Like I said, I put about 1,000 rounds on the 18-inch, and then about 3,000, and I'm being conservative, it's actually more than that, on the 7-inch upper. I ran the dog shit out of this thing, and like I said, I shot everything from Winchester, AA, BB shot, number 4 shot, number 8 shot. I used 2 3/4 and 3-inch shells, magnums, rifled slugs, non-rifled slugs, 1-ounce slugs. I used some Vital Shock Federal, that 50 caliber hollow point shell they make for hunting, and a lot of double and triple lot buck, both Federal and knockoff, whatever no-name brand. I love going into a gun store and just buying 250 rounds of whatever they have, because sometimes it's a name brand I've never heard of, and seeing how well it performs. And this thing just runs. The only issue I had, aside from the magazine issue, is it will loosen everything over time. So you definitely have to check your tightness on your accessories, because it loosened my front sight, it loosened my light mount, it loosened the light, it loosened my hot button, it loosened my QD, it loosened my vertical grip, it loosened my rear sight, it loosened the optic mount, it loosened the mount, or I'm sorry, it loosened the optic connection to the mount. It loosened everything. I actually had to take the optic off right around 2,500 rounds total. So on this upper, I don't really know what the round count was specifically because I was shooting both of them back and forth. But I would, if I had to ballpark it, I'd say right around 750 rounds on the 7-inch. I had to take the optic off and tighten everything back down, put it back on, and re-zero it, because it just loosened everything up. The thing about that is, like, the recoil, and you guys are watching on video, like, yeah, it's shotgun recoil, but like I said, it's not bad at all. Now, once I put the suppressor on it, Nothing changed. Reliability remained the same, only it got a little bit quieter. Suppressing a 7-inch gun is, I'm sorry, suppressing a 7-inch shotgun is, it's dangerously optimistic. It's not suppressed. It's a little bit quieter. I think the Ventum 12K would perform great on a longer gun. I don't have the ability to put it on one because it has that proprietary or unique thread relationship. And maybe they'll make an adapter like they did with the Ventum series. I hope they do. But on the 7-inch, it changes the tone and it's kind of quieter, but I wouldn't consider it to be suppressed. If anything, it gives me a different muzzle device. It takes a little bit of the sting out of things, a little bit of the concussion out of things when shooting in enclosed places, and it provides me a little bit of a standoff if I was going to use this to breach a door, which is a very niche need, especially for those of you who don't normally make dynamic entries into buildings. This is an exciting gun. It is, because it's the first iteration of a magazine-fed shotgun that has performed long-term reliably. And let's think about with shotguns, how long will it realistically take you to shoot 4,000 rounds? So me, it took over a year, and I was doing it on purpose. If it's just a firearm you own, but you also have ARs and pistols, is it going to go to the range with you every time? And if it does, are you going to shoot 25 rounds? That's what's in the box. You're going to shoot 2 boxes? That's 50 rounds. You're going to shoot a whole case? 250 rounds. It's going to take you a while to get up to that round count. And if you're curious, and that's why a lot of you guys watch these reviews, or you're just curious about how the product performs and you have no intention of buying it whatsoever, this is how shotguns should come. Don't get me wrong. I don't like shotguns, but I would prefer a semi-automatic over a pump. I don't mind pump actions, but magazine fed just makes life so easy. And if it's like, especially import guns, like I got this Mac 1014 right here. It looks like it's a 7-round gun. It's not. It's a 5-round gun with some fake bullshit on the end of it because of importation laws, 922R nonsense. A lot of your shotguns, your SBSs, I've got that Orthos right there. That's a 14-inch gun. It's a 5-shot tube because it has to be. Well, here's a 5-shot magazine. None of these guns behind me, including the 18s and the 20s, can hold 10 rounds. Well, here's a 10-round magazine. And it falls out, and you put another one in. And it's a lot faster to reload a 10-round magazine than it is to reload a 7 or 5-shot tube, no matter how good you are at it. And again, I am not the pinnacle of information for shotgun connoisseurs. So if you want more information on specifics, you can go elsewhere. But from my perspective, being very rifle-centric, this definitely has an application, especially for people who prefer shotguns. Now, a lot of people like shotguns for home defense purposes, and I can respect that. This is a more user-friendly gun. It also has, I'm telling you right now, this 7-inch has the same felt recoil that I'm getting out of these 18-inch guns. That's pretty cool. And I think a lot of it has to do with the way that they designed the short recoil barrel system. I believe they have a patent on the way that they did things. And the fact that I don't have to buy their lower, if I have a DPMS 308 or I just want to pick one up for like, what, 60 bucks? Those things are not expensive because they're DPMS. You can even, if you want to, you can roll the dice and run traditional pins and trigger group in it, or you can get their beef up kit and have more reliability out of it, even with the 18-inch upper. So I didn't really know what I was getting into when I ordered this. I went ahead and reached out to Genesis and said, hey, I want to order I want to order a non-SBS and an SBS. So I got the 7-inch upper, I went ahead and paid for that, and then had them charge me for an 18-inch upper as well. Honestly, I shouldn't have bought the 18-inch at all. I'm keeping this. This I'm definitely keeping, because I'm going to keep shooting this thing just for giggles. I like it. But the 18-inch upper, I'll probably end up getting rid of that, because I just don't really see me using it for anything. So if you're curious about the application of a 7-inch shotgun, I think that ultimately is up to you. Are you willing to lose the feet per second to gain the maneuverability? Also, the familiarity of manual of arms with an AR is very cool. The fact that I can reload a 5 or a 10-round gun faster than I can a 5 or a 10-round gun. Get a couple of magazines, be good to go. Magazines were reliable. Never really had any issues with them. And, you know, they were getting dropped in the mud and kicked around and knocked up. I just clean them off, reload them, put them right back in the gun. And this thing just ran like a champ. I did have some ammunition related issues at some point, and I did attribute that to the ammunition because it was only happening on a particular box, a sleeve of 50 rounds of Federal hydrosuck slugs, and those slugs were behaving strangely in 2 different shotguns. And when it happened on this gun, I went ahead and threw in a magazine of number 4 shot and number 8 shot, and it cycled fine. So it was just that ammunition on that gun and that ammunition on a different gun, so I'm attributing that to the ammunition. But as long as you keep this thing moderately oiled, it just runs like a champ. So that is my review of the Genesis Gen-12. I believe they've already got another generation of these things getting ready to come out now that they're offering a side charge, because that's one thing about this is you just kind of have to run it like an AK because it's not ambi charging. I believe they have an ambi charging version coming if it's not already available. But the overall premise and the overall functionality of the gun is going to be the same. I don't think they're going to make any big departures with the operating system because this thing is pretty badass. And if you go with the 5, I don't know about the 5, you go with the 7 or the 10 inch, if you can get one, the Huxworks Venom 12K is going to be awesome. Unfortunately, you can't run, at this time, you can't run a salvo or a JK armament on it. If you're going to suppress the 5, the 7, the 10 inch uppers, you got to use a Huxworks can. It's the only can that's going to mate currently, unless somebody comes up with an adapter down the road. So as of filming of this video, that's the only option. The 18 inch, you can run any shotgun suppressor you want on it, but that kind of sucks because the gun's already 18 inches long, and then you're going to add 7 to 9 inches of suppressor. That's never fun, which is why I wanted to do it on the 7. So, big thumbs up for me. I think this is I'm glad that this exists because it is the asterisk now when it comes to conversations about reliability and magazine-fed semi-automatic shotguns. This is the one. Till next time, Aaron Cowan, Sage Dynamics. Train accordingly.